Today I would like to welcome back to Dr. Rayne Stroebel. We will be delving a bit deeper into the final installment of our three-part series on Dr. Stroebel's Storing Elderliness in Hangberg, a critical arousal linguistic narrative journey. Now in part 3 we will delve a bit deeper into finding ways of knowing the stories and reflections. Welcome, Dr. Rayne.
Thank you, Madeleine. Good to be back.
Now, Dr. Rayne, in this final series where we will be concluding this session, I want us to talk about the essence of your final chapters, focusing on finding ways of knowing and the stories of Hangberg. In this specific chapter, we can take it a bit further. You mentioned Hangberg to kuier in gesels as a method of finding ways of knowing. Can you elaborate on the significance of this specific part in your research?
Yeah, it goes back to our first conversation, Madeleine, where, of course, if one wants to do research, one has to have a methodology. So a way of gathering the information that you want. And, going deep into the impact of colonialism and apartheid and, things like empirical knowledge and, knowledge gathering, I realized how much of that method of doing is part of the colonialist structure. Ways of extracting knowledge and not taking it back to the communities. And I realized I have to find a unique way of going into Hangberg, of finding, of engaging with stories, not just extracting knowledge like taking diamonds out of a mine. And it took me a very, very long time to realize that, there isn't really a single method that would not have a colonialist or apartheid undertone in myself as a white man going into a colored community and, extracting stories. So thanks to my supervisor, who is South African, yet she's at the University of Stirling, was at that time, we decided to create our own methodology. And the methodology was very simply kuier en gesels. So the thing that we as Afrikaners do best is om te gaan kuier en gesels, to go and visit and to chat. And again, of course, I had to write a very academic explanation and reasoning and, really convince the university board that, this is a valid methodology and that it will work. And they gave me the benefit of the doubt. So as I said previously, I didn't go in with a screening tool or an assessment or a quantitative methodology. I simply asked people, can I come and kuier and can we gesels? And that's what we did. As I said, we had Fanta grape and lemon cream biscuits and we kuiered and we gesels, and that became the methodology of being with these stories, not, extracting data or investigating. All of those terms and methodologies really hark back to a colonialist way of doing research. So it became a very informal but incredibly informative way of being with people and being in and with their stories.
Yeah, and I think we can all vouch for that. Kuier en gesels is what South Africans do best. And I think, you probably heard a lot of their personal stories at the end of the day. And it was not just solely focused on data or on specific research, but it's getting to know them on a personal level. Now, you know that storytelling is a powerful tool. How did the stories you encountered shape your understanding of elderliness in Hangberg?
Yeah, I was not only deeply moved by the beauty and the complexity and, the way that they presented hardships of apartheid, of, what we would label as poverty. And yet, the word poverty was not mentioned by one person. In fact, one person said to me as we looked across from Hangberg towards Hout Bay, where the white people live, we stood outside his house and he said to me, "You think you white people are rich?" He says, "I am the richest man in Hout Bay." And yet, when I left at the gate, he said to me, "I'm sorry that we couldn't offer you tea or coffee, but we don't have any tea or coffee." So, when one looks at perceptions and social constructs and the way that we view the world, these stories literally changed my life. It changed my being in the world. It changed my perceptions. And I think there is a lot of very valuable knowledge that was shared that the world should pay more attention to. And that is, the and reciprocity, the impact of intergenerational communal living, the impact of what is called caretisanship, as citizenship that is structured around care. I know my neighbors, but I also care about them. And that forms part of the citizenship of our community. That community is still to this day extremely marginalized. And yet they have created their own sense of community and structure. They're not blaming government. They really couldn't care about government. So yeah, creating a community that relies upon its citizens to care for each other, and that in that community people age differently. They have a purpose, they have meaning. They are not seen as a care burden. They're in fact seen as the biggest asset of the community. The older people who everyone can rely on for whatever it is, taking the grandchildren to school, cooking for them, providing a roof over their head, but also giving children the opportunity to care for them. So again, this rhizomatic, it's so complex, and yet so powerful.
Thank you, Dr. Rayne. I think as we wrap up the series, you definitely shared the impact that your research has had on the specific community, delving a bit deeper and hearing their stories and their nuances specifically. And I think this just gives us some greater insight and perspective as to what exactly this was all about. It was great getting some insight as to what the different part series was made up onto and getting to know and experience your journey into Hangberg with you as well on a personal level. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks, Madeleine, and thanks for being interested. I appreciate that.
Chat to you again soon. Thanks, Dr. Rayne.